Okay, let us begin the lecture. So, in today's class, we'll be discussing mainly two topics. One is the millennium problem, $1,000,000 question, which is called Claymate problem. And another is that how do we classify the PDEs? Okay, so that is the first exercise which we are going to do in this course. So the millennium problem, we'll see that. So in the last class, we already discussed about what is the PDE, okay, what is the, how do we define that, what is the domain, etc. We have discussed. Now, also we have seen like what are all the different four important PDEs, and then more PDEs also we have seen like different types of PDE, Maxwell's equations, Navier-Stokes equation, Euler equation, etc., etc. Now in this class, it is a continuation of the previous class because we have to this was supposed to cover in the last class, but due to time limitation, I didn't cover that. So let us see that problem. So what is the problem? Let us see, which is called one of the unsolved problem. Okay, there are plenty of unsolved problems in each of the mathematical domain. So this is one such unsolved problem, which is carrying about $1,000,000 price. Okay, once you solve the problem. So this is called Claymate problem, okay, which is called $1,000,000 question. So as I mentioned in the last class, it is not necessary that all PDEs have a solution. For example, you can take this problem ux squared plus 1. Okay, so this problem does not have a solution. Okay, so all PDEs not necessary that all PDEs should have a solution. Also, we can't expect a general theorem, general existence theorem for a general PDE. For example, in the case of ODE, if certain conditions are satisfied, you can say that using Peano's existence theorems or other theorems, you can prove that this is going to have a existence. But you can't expect a general existence theorem for a general PDE. For certain class, you can say, but for certain class, you cannot say. Also, like this is something similar to that. Like you might have studied in the school days that suppose a linear system is given, you cannot expect the solutions for all the problems all the time. You cannot expect unique solution. Sometimes the solution itself may not exist. So this you have seen already in the linear algebra course or matrix in school days. All same way, all PDEs will not have solutions. Okay, it may have like some solutions, some may not have. So something similar to that, like all polynomials or system of linear equations or implicit functions, all these things do not have solution always, because according to certain conditions, it may be having a solution. For example, a simple problem like linear algebra or matrix theory, you can see that. So suppose certain conditions like the rank of the augmented matrix and the rank of the matrix, if they are having the equality or not equality, depending on that, the solutions will be varying. Okay, you may have infinite solution or no solutions or unique solutions. All these things varies depending on that rank of the matrix. So non-linear equations, again, it's a big challenging problem. Like you can go for fixed point theory or some of the Newton-Raphson method, etc., to find some of the roots only. Not all the solutions you cannot find. Some of the solutions you will be finding, and then you will be proceeding. So it is not necessary that all the time you will get a solution something. So the same is applicable for this PDE also. Okay. So in ODE, for classifying this existence and uniqueness, you have something like Peano's existence theorem is there, and Picard's existence and uniqueness theorem is there. And these theorems are addressing some of the existence solutions for initial value problem, not all the problem. Some of the initial value problem for the first order ODEs, which we are trying to do. Then we extend this idea, okay, we extend this study to any ODE in normal form that we are extending, and then we are trying to find the answers for that. In PDE, you can expect a similar kind of results. Okay, you can expect a similar one for PDE, but it is not always possible. It is not possible always. So different types of problem will have different conditions. In the same kind of first order ODE itself, if you change the conditions, definitely your conditions may be changing, because you will be landing in again in a ODE. So whenever I have a PDE, I will be trying to solve the problem. I will try to convert the problem into ODE, and then I will try to seek a solution in the ODE. If that ODE solution is existing, then I will come back to the PDE and then say this is the solution you are going to expect from that. Okay, that is the idea we are going to see. So, but in general, you cannot expect a PDE to have a solution. Even the conditions will be very simple, but still you will not get that solution. So let us see one simple $1 million question problem, one of the $1 million question problem, which is called Claymate there are 7 problems are there, which is clay math problem. Okay, you can Google what is clay math problem. So you will see like $7 million questions will be there. So the clay mathematics, it was found by T. Clay and his wife in 1998, and they stated 7 unsolved problems in 2000. That is called millennium problem. Okay, $1 million prize problem. So millennium problem. So the correct solutions, discoverer. Okay, if you solve any of these 7 problems, okay, if you solve any of these problems, what you will get is that you will get $1 million US. So in 2003, Poincare, there was a problem called Poincare conjecture. So that Poincare conjecture was solved by Bellman in 2003. Okay, that was the only problem so far solved, and but still he declined the money. Okay, so the price was offered, but he declined the money. Even he declined the Fields Medal also. Okay, so the Navier-Stokes equation, which is one of the $1 million problem. Okay, which is called the existence and smoothness. So what is smoothness and all we'll discuss a little later, but I'll just brief you here. Navier-Stokes existence and smoothness means this Navier-Stokes problem I will discuss. So for that, what is the existence of the problem? What is the smoothness of the problem? That is one of the unsolved problem. Okay, unsolved problem so far. It is not solved so far. So the rest of the contents in this presentation, which I'm going to explain now, it is taken from this Claymath website. Okay, claymath.org. There is a, if you go to that website, you can see the list of unsolved problem. So one such problem is Navier-Stokes problem. Similarly, there is a NP-Hart problem and Riemann problems. Many things are there. Okay, so let us see this problem. This is called this PD is called the Navier-Stokes equation. So the problem is as follows. So you have ut plus ux plus u. This is a 3-dimensional one. In general, you can put it for the n-dimensional also. You can put it. Okay. So ut plus ux plus uy plus uz equal to minus px. Okay. Plus nu into uxx plus uyy plus uzz plus some f1 of x comma y comma z. Similarly, you can just put that for the other variable. Like here you can change it py. Okay, and here you can put f2. Similarly, pz. Similarly, you can put f3. So different variables will be there. So here ut is that. Okay, so here it will become like vt, and then u into vx will come. Okay, plus sorry. Here actually vuy. This is wz. So this is vy and wvz will come equal to minus py plus nu into here vxx plus vyy plus vzz plus f2 of x comma y comma z. Similarly, there will be a wt. Okay, and then you got to replace here u wx v wy plus v w wz equal to minus pz plus nu into wxx plus wyy plus wzz. So what is this problem is talking about is that, okay, this is actually a general problem of conservation of momentum. This problem is very simple. You might have studied in the school days that this formula F equal to ma. This formula you might have studied, F equal to ma, force equal to mass into acceleration. This is the same thing which we are explaining in this way. Okay, this is very simple, F equal to ma. That only we are trying to express in terms of this one. Okay, because you are going to have like the same a is nothing but the acceleration which you are having. Okay, so uxx plus uyy uzz is going to become this way because acceleration is the second derivative. That's what you are having here. But in this case, you might have studied simply this one. Okay, d square y by dx square only you might have studied in the school days. A is nothing but d square by dx square. Y is nothing but the displacement, and first derivative is going to become like velocity. Second derivative is going to become like acceleration. Now same thing here. Okay, so this is d square y by dx square. You can put the same way here. Okay, or d square y by dt square you can put. Now same way what we are going to do is that here this is a generalization of that. Okay, so using the generalization what you are going to have is that suppose I have a particle. Okay, so it may have 3 directions will be there. Okay, in 3 dimensions I'm talking about, so 3 directions will be there. So there will be a velocity. Okay, there will be a velocity in the x direction, there will be a velocity in the y direction, there will be a velocity in the z direction. So that means what I'm going to do is that what is the what is the things going to happen here? So I'm going to have, so this direction I'm going to take it as U, this direction I'm going to take it as V, this direction I'm going to take it as W. So like this, I can just put it and then I can solve what is the nature of the problem is going to come. So once you derive this one, what you are going to get is that you are going to get some equations of this form. Okay, so the derivations probably will see it using the Reynolds transport theorem at the later stage, but this is the Navier-Stokes equation. And then in order to solve this problem, you need a condition called continuity equation is required. So the continuity equation is as follows. So ux plus vy plus wiz equal to 0. This is one condition I am having. Okay, so this also I have. So now what I are going to have is that you are going to solve this problem. Okay, so that is this. Once I solve this problem, it is going to be function of ux, y, z, t. Okay, 4 variables are there. Okay, u of x, y, z, t. Similarly, v of x, y, z, t, w of x, y, z, t, and p of x, y, z, t. So there are unknowns. 4 unknowns are there. V of x, y, z, t, and then p of x, y, z, t. Okay, 4 unknowns are there and 4 equations are there. So naturally, we expect some solution, and then we are trying to solve the problem. So this is talking about a fluid dynamics problem where how the flow is going to happen along the stream of the river or along the ocean or in the atmosphere. All these things we can talk about. Okay, the fluid, generally fluid means it is consists of liquid and gases. So this is the viscosity of the fluid. Okay, for example, kinematic viscosity. For example, if you take a honey, the viscosity will change. If you take a water, the viscosity will change. So all these things it is taken into account, and then that is described over here. Now this F1, F2, F3, these are all called, so there is F3 here. Okay, these are all called the external forces. So you can put some forces on that, you can put some extra forces on the moving particle, and then you can make it accelerated or decelerated, etc. So all these things are happening. Now if this nu is 0, then that equation is called, that is called incompressible, that is called Euler equation is going to come. And here, actually, in the general equation, what you will have is that you will have something like rho will be there. Okay, rho ut, and here also rho terms will come. But I am just assuming this is incompressible flow. So in that case, I'm just forgetting about the rho, because once you talk about particle movement or some something is happening in a fluid. Okay, suppose you are taking a cup of water and then just pouring in from somewhere. Okay, suppose you are just taking some cup of water and then pouring it somewhere. Then what is going to happen? The flow is going to happen, right? Those kind of flows also it can happen that. Now, once we talk about the physical nature of that, there will be velocity, density, all these things will be there. So this is rho is nothing but the density. So in this case, I'm just assuming that is constant. So you can just forget about that. Okay. So this is one of the fundamental equation in fluid mechanics, how the flow is happening in a flow of water and a stream of water, or how the break once the dam is broken, how that how the flow is going to happen. Or you might have seen that in the Rishikesh and other places there were some glacier was falling down, and due to that there were floods in the Ganga river or Yamuna rivers. All these things you can just govern using this Navier-Stokes equations. But the problem is that it is difficult to solve either analytically or numerically. In both ways, it is difficult to solve. So apart from that, we are giving a condition called the initial value condition also I'm giving. So u of x, y, z, 0 equal to some condition I'm going to give. Okay, so I'm just denoting it as u naught of x, y, z. Means it is initial condition. So it is not depending on the time. Okay, so u naught of x, y, z. So now the question is that, suppose the initial condition is given. Now the question is that, okay, the initial condition I have given. Now what is the solution after certain stage? Okay, so suppose I know like what is the glacier has broken at this stage. Okay, now what I want to understand is that, suppose this much force I have given on the glacier. Okay, or the nature has given some force on the glacier. Now what will happen after 10 minutes? Whether it will reach the some places near Uttar Pradesh or will reach some places near Delhi, like this. Okay, some questions. So that you have to understand. So after what time it will reach, or how long will it take to reach, or whether it will reach a high peak or whether it will be dissipate. Okay, all these questions you can ask. So the question is that this is given. Now the question is that finding the existence and uniqueness of the solution or non-existence of the solution for all future times. Okay, after so time t equal to 0 it is given. Now time t equal to 10 or time t equal to 100, all these things you have to check it. Okay, whether the solution will be existing or will not exist, this one you have to find. This is the major fundamental problem. So, but this is unsolved problem. Okay, this problem is still unsolved. Okay, unsolved problem in mathematics. So the question is that suppose, okay, so what is the in a mathematical formulation, let us put it. Okay, suppose x equal to xy z belongs to R cube, and I'm just denoting u of x comma t. Okay, I'm just going to denote a simple notation. U of x comma t is nothing but u of x comma y comma z comma t, and then comma v of x comma y comma z comma t, means I'm just converting it into a vector form. Okay, z comma t. So these are all the components of this u. Okay. Similarly, I can just define p of x comma t. P of x comma t is simply a scalar one, so that belongs to R. And f of x comma t, since I got three components f1, f2, f3, that also I'm just going to denote as f of x comma t, where I'll just putting these three as component. F1, f2, f3, I'm just keeping this as a component. So mathematically, let us formulate this problem. What is the problem? So for physically reasonable, okay, suppose I want to be physically reasonable, what we would like to make sure is that this u of x comma t, okay, this u of x comma t does not grow as large as x tends to infinity. So as x tends to infinity, what I want is that, because you imagine that x tends to infinity means once the glacier is fall down, what is it going to happen? It is going to flow along the river. The flow is going to happen along the river. The river is kind of infinite channel. Okay, it is going to take a long path and it is going to do. So that means as large as the x tends to infinity, whether this velocity is going to grow. Okay, so that's what we want to understand, whether it is a glacier falling down or is it a tsunami waves it is going to falling down. All these things, what we are trying to do is that suppose some earthquake or some glacier gas fall down or something happened in that Broken Dam, what we want to understand is that after it is reaching a long, if it is nearby region, definitely we can expect that the velocity is going to be high. But as large as x tends to infinity means I'm just going along a long path, okay, or it is going to spread over a long path. In that case, will that u of x comma t is going to grow large or it is going to be dissipate? Okay, that we want to understand. So how do we make sure that does not grow as large as x tends to infinity? Okay, so we means that velocity should be controlled somehow. Okay, how it is going to happen? That we need to understand. So let us keep some restrictions on f and u naught now. Okay, what are the restrictions? So I'm just going to keep like this with respect to x. Okay, I'm just taking the partial derivative, all the possible partial derivatives. Okay, I'm just trying to take dou x of alpha. So the condition number one, I'm just going to put dou x of alpha of u naught. Okay, u naught of x. This is something similar to what we have seen in the first order PD, where you used to put this, right? F of x comma y is less than or equal to m. Okay, and then you used to put like a Lipschitz condition or f dash of xy. Same way I'm just putting here. So I'm just keeping on the initial conditions only. This is on the initial condition only I'm keeping. So dou x of alpha u naught of x is less than or equal to c alpha k into 1 plus mod x power minus k. Okay, so this should be less than or equal to this one. This is condition number one. For any alpha and k, it should be true. Then second condition, okay. So I'm just going to keep dou x alpha, okay, second derivative. This is on the f, okay, f of x comma t. This is also less than or equal to c alpha mk. Okay, so these are all the constants. Okay, into 1 plus mod x plus t power minus k. Here t is not modulus because we assume t is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so for any alpha mk. So this is also should be true for any alpha mk should be true. Okay, so these are all some restriction I'm going to keep. So the solution for this problem, okay, this 1, 2, 3. So this solution, this together is called 1. This is 2. This is 3. Okay, this is together is called 1. So the solution for this 1, 2, 3 is accepted as physically reasonable only if satisfy this condition. Okay, so this is in terms of I will explain that what is it. So it is acceptable only if pu of c infinity of r cube comma 0 comma infinity. So what is C infinity is C infinity means it is called infinitely differentiable. This is actually called a smooth function. We'll see that. Okay, this is another similar kind of notations we'll be using for D called distribution also. So this is called C infinity. C infinity means it is infinitely differentiable. So if I put simply C, okay, so if I put simply C of R, this means it is a set of all continuous function. If I put C1 of R, this means it is going to have set of all continuous set of all differential function and continuous also. Okay, means set of all continuously differentiable function, means one time it is continuously differentiable. If I put C2 of R, okay, this means it is twice differentiable and the differentiated function is also continuous, C2 of R. Similarly, I can put C3 of R, C4 of R, etc. So C infinity of R is nothing but the intersection of all these things. Okay, so it is called infinitely smooth function or infinitely differentiable. For example, you can take e power x. E power x is infinitely differentiable, so that belongs to C infinity of R. Okay, that belongs to C infinity of R. So if you take as much derivative as you want, you can simply say that Ex is going to be differentiable. Okay, so this is called infinitely differentiable, and again it is going to become like a continuous function only. So this is one such example. So what I expect is that in this problem, what I'm expecting is that this P and this U both should be in this interval. Okay, C belongs to C infinity of R cube, comma 0, comma infinity, it should be there. Second one, apart from that, what I require is that I require integral, okay, integral R cube, okay, the integral Ux comma T, the norm, okay, this is kind of norm, okay, into dx is less than or equal to C, means it should be bounded with respect to in the entire region. Okay, Ux comma T whole square dx should be less than or equal to C for all T greater than or equal. All the time it should be bounded. For any T, it should be bounded. So this is the reasonably accepted solution. Okay, the solution of 1, 2, 3 is accepted as physically reasonable if this condition. Suppose you said that I already found a solution for this problem, then the question will be that whether it is physically reasonable. So in order to verify that whether it is physically reasonable, you have to satisfy this condition as well as this condition. Both conditions should be satisfied. Okay, then we can say it is your solution is accepted. Suppose you forget about the problems at infinity. Suppose something is happening at the problem. There is going to be a problem at the infinity, because that may not be going to happen at in the reality, because the infinity will not be happening, because everything is having finite thing. So suppose the problems at infinity is ruled out. Okay, then what we are trying to do is that we don't want that one. At least what we want is that some periodic solution. Okay, periodic solution, spatially periodic solution I want. For example, I have like from class here, something is happened near the glacier, means like let us say like 10 kilometers from the Himalayas where the glacier was broken. So there it has happened. Then after 10 kilometers, what is the things is going to happen? That also we can observe and then we can check it. So for that one, what I'm going to assume is that I'm going to assume different conditions now. So here I'm just going to impose something like, so this is U naught of x is given. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to impose some more conditions, the other conditions, okay. So either you can solve this problem or you can solve this problem. Okay, so in this case, what I'm going to take is that I'm going to take U naught of x plus ej. Okay, U naught of x plus ej equal to U naught of x, means this is periodic. You know that periodic means f of x plus p equal to f of x. Okay, for some period p. So this is going to happen. Same thing I'm writing here. Okay, U naught of x plus ej. Ej is here I'm denoting ej because this is a vector. Okay, so this is simply p. Here I'm just denoting ej, means it is going to have some period. Okay, so u of x plus ej equal to this one. Okay, so means I have to have everything in the, so here x plus ej means I'm just denoting x plus e1, y plus e2, z plus e3. That's what I mean here. Okay, x plus ej equal to u naught of x should be there. Okay, u naught of x should be there. Similarly, like you can just put y plus ej equal to u naught of y, z plus ej equal to u naught of z. So I'm just simply writing that. Similarly, you can say the same thing for f of x plus ej, okay, equal to some f of x comma t. I can put it. So this is also same thing. Apart from that, what I have is that this condition is as it is. Okay, so I'm just replacing this condition with this condition, this boundary, this periodic condition I'm replacing. Because I don't know what is going to happen at the infinite, so I'm just replacing this one with this condition. This condition is as it is. Okay, since here what I'm going to notice that I'm just forgetting about the x. Okay, this x I'm just removing, only plus t is going to be there. So these are all the conditions given. Again the same thing, when it is going to be physically reasonable, again this p comma u belongs to c infinity of r cube, it should be there. Apart from that, this u of x plus ej, okay, so this condition is not there. Instead of that, I'm just replacing, instead of this condition, I'm just going to replace u of x plus ej comma t equal to u of x comma t should be there. So in this, instead of this condition, I'm going to put u of x plus ej equal to u of x comma t. So these are all the conditions given to you. Okay. Now the question is that the uniqueness, existence and uniqueness. So there are four problems available in this one. Okay, means in order to get this price, you have to solve all these four problems. At least if you solve partial of the problem, then you will get some fame or some you can become popular. Okay, so suppose let us assume this nu is greater than 0. Okay, and it is given that this u naught of x is smooth. So u naught of x is smooth means u naught belongs to c infinity of r cube. Okay, u naught belongs to c infinity of r cube. And it's given that divergence free vector field which satisfies the condition 4. The condition 4 is this one. This is condition 4. Okay, this is satisfied. Now, what is this theorem? It is saying that, okay, this is the unsolved problem. What is it saying is that when the Rx is a smooth function p of x comma t, p comma u comma v, means this p comma u belongs to smooth function, means it belongs to c infinity of r cube comma 0 comma infinity. That same thing, I'm just writing it in watts. Okay, this means smooth function. Okay, if it is belong to this one, this is smooth function. So that satisfies these three equations. Okay, and together with 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is this one. Okay, whether that is going to exist or not. So what is given is that, so suppose your u naught is smooth function and satisfy this condition. Okay, then the question is that whether there exists a smooth function which satisfies these two conditions. Okay, this is required. Okay, so if you solve this problem, that is problem number 1. Okay, this is called existence and uniqueness of Navier-Stokes equations, solution A. Now B, part B is that same thing. What I'm going to do is that I'm just going to assume that other things are same. U naught is smooth and divergence free vector is there. Now it is satisfying the condition number 8. The condition number 8 is as follows. This one. U of x plus ej equal to u naught of x and f of x plus ej equal to f of x comma t. So this is condition number 8. So if that is satisfied, then again what I'm expecting is that I'm just expecting same thing, whether p comma u belongs to c infinity of r cube. Okay, that satisfies all these conditions. Okay, now the condition is that not these two conditions, instead it has to satisfy these conditions plus this condition, u of x plus ej equal to u of x comma t. That is condition number 10 and 11. Okay, so that should be satisfied. Now problem number C, what I'm going to keep is that breakdown of Navier-Stokes solution. So I'm just going to break down into small pieces and then trying to see. So in this case, again the conditions are same. I'm just going to put another condition. F of x comma t also I'm assuming it is a c infinity function. Okay, f of x comma t, this f of x comma t also I'm just assuming it is a c infinity function, and satisfies 4 and 5. What is 4? 4 is this one. Okay, 4 is this one. Okay, 5 is this one. It is satisfying both these conditions. In the previous one, I'm not making any assumption on this one because I'm assuming f equal to 0. Okay, so only this condition, only condition was on u only. Now for the breakdown solution, what I'm assuming, I'm just assuming for the f of x comma t also I got to assume some condition. So f is smooth and it satisfies this condition. Then what I expect is that I'm just expecting it should satisfy the p of x comma p of u should satisfy 1, 2, 3. This should satisfy. Okay, and then 6 and 7. These two should be satisfied. Okay. Same thing. Now you can see that for the D, you can expect what is going to happen. Same thing. So it is going to happen. This condition is satisfied. Then apart from that, this would be smooth. Okay. Then what I'm expecting my f should I should expect this one. Okay, this one and this one. These two should be satisfied. So this is called a millennium problem. Okay. So this is one of the unsolved problem in the PDE. That is the reason. So why am I talking? Because anyhow, this is not going to be for your exams or anything. But why am I talking about this problem is that once you attend any PDE course, at least you should know, or if you attend any of the lectures, okay, like either analysis or algebra, at least you should know, because this is an elective course. That means you are you have chosen this elective because you have in mind that you are going for some higher studies or something like you want to learn something like expert level. Okay, so in that case, if you say take any elective, at least you should know that what are all the important of that subject. Okay, what is the important of the subject, as well as you should know like what are all the unsolved problems in that domain, or unsolved something called conjecture they used to say. Okay, if you go to the topology or analysis, there are many conjectures, or even if you take number theory, there are many conjectures are available. Okay, so those conjectures at least you should know at the end of the course, so that you can, once you because the main motive of all these elective courses is that it is trying to motivate you to go to some higher studies, either research or something. So in that aspect, you should know, suppose you have taken any elective courses, in that elective courses at least you should know what are all the unsolved problems in that, what are all the research areas scope for that. Okay, so this is one such research scope which you have. Okay, so that's why I just want to emphasize over here. So after this, there won't be any more like the other things which is apart from the syllabus. Okay, so mostly like we'll be sticking to the syllabus from this onwards. Okay, now let us go to the classification of PDEs. What is the classification? Okay, so there are for classification also, if you read many textbooks, there will be like different people will be saying different reasons for the classification, and some people will disagree that there is no classification is required, solve it as it is, all this also there. So based on the number of properties, we can group families of similar equations. Okay, that is happening in all the time. You classify as different kinds of matrices, different kinds of equations, etc. Same thing here. Okay, we are trying to group similar kind of partial differential equations. So here I mean equations, I mean that partial differential equations. So as I mentioned, some researchers or some authors, they don't see advantage of the classification. They don't classification process is not required, they used to say. But some classifications are giving some branding name. For example, you can say the Navier-Stokes equation which we have seen, or Euler equation, or heat equation. This is also kind of classification which we have. And some classification which will be helpful to identify or guess some answers. For example, if you solve a heat equation or you solve an elliptic problem, then you can expect a similar kind of solution for the same kind of equation which I give. Okay, so you can expect that. So that means if I just say the equation, from that equation you can guess or identify some of the properties of the equation, so that you can expect what is the solution is going to be there, etc. And some classification will help to identify what is the initial and boundary condition which can be allowed. Okay, some of the classification which can tell you, okay, if I put this boundary condition, will it work or not? That you can easily identify. Okay, sometimes it may not work, so that one you can easily identify if you know the classification. And also, like depending on the classification, also you can choose the numerical method. Like different kinds of numerical methods are there in the partial differential equation, ranging from like finite difference method, finite volume method, finite element method, etc., etc. is there. So all these classifications you can see. Different types of problem will have different kinds of numerical method, which will take some advantages over that. Also, apart from that, there are classifications based on done using characteristics of the PDE, or the order of the PDE, linearity, etc., etc. It is going to be there. So in this class, mostly we'll be talking about few classifications only. Again, the second order PDE, once we come, again we'll talk about the PDEs. Another classification is there that we'll see that. So we'll just recap again the same thing. So the classification of PDE, for this we need the formal definition of the PDE. So this we have already seen. So F is a mapping from omega cross R power P cross R power NP, okay, R power cross R power N square P, etc., etc., R power N power MP to R power Q. This we have seen already. This is the satisfying. So this is the function, okay, and it's called system of partial difference. We can say so x comma u comma d alpha u d d square u d cube u, etc., etc., d power mu equal to 0. So this is the formal definition of the PDE which we have seen. Okay, this is called the if the mth order PDE, okay, mth order derivative of the function. So this is called a system of PDE we have seen. Now we are going to classify them. Okay, how are we going to classify? Let us see that. Okay, so first thing is system. Okay, suppose what do you have in this one? Suppose more than one equation is there. Okay, so this equation, suppose more than one equation is there, then that is called system of PDE. Otherwise, it is called single PDE. Okay, if there is more than one equation, that is called system of PDE. For example, a simple example, this Navier-Stokes equation. Okay, this is a PDE. This 1 and 2. Okay, this is PDE. This is a system of PDE because you have UVW is there. Okay, so there is a system. Suppose I don't have the UVW, just only one equation is there. UT is equal to UX plus UY plus UZ, etc. Is that, then that is called single PDE. Okay, that is nothing there. For example, this is a single PDE. The heat equation I can say, or the transport equation I can say, UT plus AUX equal to 0. This is a single PDE. Okay, whereas this equation, the Navier-Stokes equation, is called a system of PDE. Similarly, we have discussed many PDEs in the last class. You can just classify what are all the system of PDE, what are all called single PDE. Okay, fine. So that is I leave it to you as an exercise. Next one, based on the highest order derivative, also I can classify them. Okay, so for example, the highest order derivative is appearing is m. Okay, for example, here you can say that this is a first order PDE because the highest derivative is here also UT, here also UX. Okay, so that is this is a first order PDE. Now suppose this Navier-Stokes equation. So from the first equation, you can guess what is the order of the PDE. So what is the order of this PDE? What is the order of this PDE? 2. Because UXX, UYY, UZ is there. So therefore it is called the second order PDE. Okay, order of PDE is 2. So it is called second order PDE. Okay, so the highest order derivative appearing in the PDE is m, then such PDE is called mth order PDE. Now classification number 3. So in algebra course already you might have learned like what is the linear, etc. The same kind of thing. So here we are going to classify as linear and non-linear. So what I'm going to do is that suppose this equation. Okay, so this equation, this algebraic equation is to classify as linear and non-linear algebra equations in the algebra course you might have learned. Same thing here. Suppose this equation 12. Okay, this equation 12 can be rewritten in this form. LU equal to F. Suppose it can be written in this way, where L is some operator I'm going to write. Okay, for example, if I write like UT plus UX, AUX, okay, I can just write this L is nothing but something like some T plus some A into some Xi. So here I can just replace with U. So this is some operator I have. Okay, this box which I filled is some operator I have. So if I can write that one, okay, then depending on this operator, whether this operator is linear or not, depending on that I can choose. Okay, so this is operator. It is not necessary, since I mentioned here, it doesn't mean that it's linear. So I just mentioned some operator. If this operator is linear, then it is called linear PDE. If this operator is not linear, then again the subclassifications are there, which we will commit in the next slide. So suppose this operator is linear. That means what? Suppose LU equal to F. I have rewritten this equation in this form, LU equal to F. Then what I can write, I can just check whether L of alpha U plus beta V equal to alpha into L of U plus beta into L of V. Okay, so this is satisfied. This is satisfied for any function U and V. Then we can say that this PDE, the corresponding PDE is called linear PDE. Okay, this is called linear PDE. Okay, for example, or in other words, what we can do is that if the operator L, okay, so in this equation, the operator L in this is linear, okay, then it is called a linear PDE, which we have seen. Equivalently, what we can write is that if it is a linear PDE, what you are going to get is that you are going to get something like, so if I rewrite this equation, okay, so equivalently, this is going to be of this form. So summation, if it is linear, you can always write it with this form. Alpha less than or equal to M, okay, A alpha X, D alpha U equal to fx. Means what I mean to say here is that the coefficients are the right, all the coefficients, not only that higher order derivative, all the coefficients, okay, mth order derivative, all its coefficient should be a function of x only. Okay, it should be a function of x only. Okay, because here linear with respect to u only you are checking, so it can be anything under x. So a alpha x, it should be a function of x only. The coefficients of these t alpha u should be a function of x only. Then we say that it is a linear PD. Okay, for example, you can take this problem, ut plus ux equal to 0. Is it linear? Is it linear or not linear? Anyone?
Linear.
Yeah, because the coefficient here, the first coefficient is 1, second coefficient is also 1, so it is linear. Because it is a function of x only, it's constant already, so it is linear. Similarly, uxx plus uyy equal to 0, it is also linear because here also I don't have anything. Okay, so it is going to be linear. Similarly, I can check ut plus x square ux, okay, equal to 0. Again, this is 1. Here it is x square, but I can say a alpha x. Okay, so that is function of x only. Therefore, it is linear. Okay, it is not non-linear. It is linear. These are all some examples. Now, if it is not linear, okay, if it is not linear, you can just simply say it is a. If L is not linear, simply you can say that it is non-linear PD. Okay, or equivalently, if you cannot write it in this form, then we can say it is a non-linear PD. Okay, for example, I can say like ut plus ux equal to 0, ut plus ux equal to 0. This is non-linear PDE because what you have here, the coefficient is 1, whereas here the coefficient of x is u, which is not a function of x alone, it's a function of u also. Therefore, it is a non-linear PDE. Similarly, ux square plus uy square is non-linear because if I write this equation, I can write this way: ux plus uy I can write it. So I can just take the coefficient of this one. This is going to be function of u, and this is also a function of u. Therefore, this is not non-linear PD. Okay, these are all some examples of non-linear PD. So you can just classify the cases which we have discussed earlier also in the same way, whether it is linear or non-linear. So how about this equation? Navier-Stokes equation. Is it linear or non-linear?
Non-linear.
Why? Is correct. Answer is correct. Why?
So coefficients are not depending on x.
Yeah, because ux is having a coefficient u, so it is not non-linear PD. Okay, fine, good. Next one. So the PDEs which are not linear. Okay, so we have already categorized non-linear and linear PDE, but the PDEs can be further categorized depending on the linearity of different derivatives. Also, they used to classify. Okay, so this linear means all the coefficients should be a alpha of x should be there, but depending on the linearity of different derivatives, also they used to classify as quasi-linear or non-quasi-linear or fully linear. So let us see that. Okay, so again, this equation is called quasi-linear. If it is linear in the derivatives of order m with coefficients that depend on the independent variable, and derivatives of the unknown functions are strictly less than d. So let me explain that in the next slide. What does it mean? So what we are trying to say is that the derivatives of the mth order PD, okay, the mth coefficient, okay, the last coefficient means the highest coefficient should be depend on the independent variable only. Okay, independent variables and derivatives of the function of strictly less than m. So let me say that in other words, equivalently I can write it. So what I mean here is that, see, for example, suppose I have summation mod alpha equal to m, okay, a alpha of x comma u comma du comma etc d m minus 1 of u into d alpha u, okay, plus a naught into x comma u comma du comma etc dm minus 1. Means what I'm trying to do is that, see, in the earlier one it was alpha less than or equal to m. Now what I'm trying to do is that here I'm just putting only that alpha equal to m term. Okay, mth PDE is called linear if it can be written in this form. So mth PDE I'm writing it as, I can write it as A alpha of x comma u comma du comma dm minus 1 means this A alpha in the earlier one it was function of x only. Here it can depend on x also, u also, du also, dm minus 1 u also. Means except the m it can depend on. Okay, except the m it can depend on. So all these things it can have into d alpha u plus I have a naught of x comma u comma du comma etc. is that. So here a alphas are functions of x and derivatives of the previous known function. Okay, previous derivatives. Okay, derivatives of the unknown function of order less than m. Okay, this you can write it. Then it is called quasi-linear PDE. We will see one example in the next slide. And similarly, an mth order PDE is called fully non-linear if it is not linear in the derivatives of the order m. Okay, it is not linear in the derivatives of the order m also it is not linear. Okay, equivalently, if it is not quasi-linear, then it is called fully non-linear. Okay, so that's what we have. So same thing I have written here, same slide. Okay, there is an example here. For example, you can take this problem ux plus uuy equal to 0. Okay, so this one we are going to check whether it is a linear or not linear. Definitely it is not linear because the coefficient of uy is having u, therefore it is not linear. Now we are going to check whether it is a quasi-linear or not. So quasi-linear means what I got to check? The coefficient of ux and coefficient of uy, we got to check it whether it is having satisfying this condition. Okay, so the order of this PDE is 1. Therefore, what are all the permissible cases where it can have the coefficient is that either it can be constant. Okay, the coefficient can be constant, or it can be function of x. Okay, or it can be function of u because it is a first order PDE. Okay, so therefore it can be constant, it can be x, it can be u. So here it is constant because the coefficient is 1 here. Here it is u, it is permissible. Okay, these are all permissible. I can put u function of u also I can put u square etc. Okay, function of u I can put it, but I can't put ux, I can't put uy, I can't put, or uxx again I can't put. Okay, so these are all not permissible. This is not permissible. So here u is there since it is permissible, so therefore it is called quasi-linear. Now same thing. Suppose instead of that I have this problem ut plus a of u into ux equal to 0. So again same thing. This is constant, and here it is a of u, so I can have some function of u also. Therefore it is quasi-linear PDE. Now how about this one? Ux square plus uy square equal to 0. Okay. So in this case I can write it as ux again plus uy I can write it equal to 0. Now what are all the permissible coefficient? If it is a quasi-linear PDE, it's either it should be constant or x, it should be function of u. But here it is a function of ux. Okay, it is ux is there. Okay, ux uy or function of ux uy you can put it. Okay, ux uy you can put it. So it is function of, it is ux is there, here uy is there, therefore it is not quasi-linear PDE. So it is called fully non-linear. Okay, in this case it is called fully non-linear. Similarly, you can take the divergence of del u of square root of del u square, that is also fully non-linear. And ut plus ux square minus u equal to cos xt is also fully non-linear because ux square is there, so it is fully non-linear. Any doubts? Okay. Next one is called semi-linear. Okay. This semi-linear, this quasi-linear can be further classified as semi-linear PDE and non-semi-linear PDE. So what is semi-linear PDE? Let us see that. Suppose the mth derivative, the largest coefficient, okay, the highest derivatives coefficient is function of independent variable alone, means x alone. Okay, then it is called semi-linear PDE. Let us see that. So for example, I have this one, same thing, mod of alpha equal to m. Here, instead of this one, in the quasi-linear PDE, it can be x, it can be du, it can be dm minus u. Whereas in the semi-linear PDE, it should be function of x only. Okay, it should be a function of x only. I alpha of x, d alpha u. Only the highest derivative. Okay, remaining derivative it can be anything. Remaining derivative it can be anything. It can be anything. Only the highest derivative it should be having a function of x only. Then it is called semi-linear PDE. Okay, the highest derivative should have the function of x only. Then that is called semi-linear PDE. So let us see an example. Okay. So ut plus ux plus u square equal to 0. Okay, so this problem ut plus ux plus u square equal to 0. Okay. So in this case, always you look at the highest derivative only. So here too, in that case, you got to look at both ut and ux. So both are constant only. So that is called semilinear. Now, how about this one? Ut plus uxx plus ux. Whether it is semilinear or not, let us see. So here, you got to check the highest derivative only. Okay, not the remaining thing. So here it is having function of u. Okay, so automatically your mind will go that since ux equal to ux, u is there, the u, so you'll think that it is not function of x, so it is not semilinear. You will go to that. But don't look at this one. You got to look at the highest derivative only. The highest derivative is this one. So for this, the coefficient is 1 only. First of all, you got to classify whether it is a quasi-linear PDE. It is quasi-linear PDE because you have the coefficients are either constant or x or u is there. Okay, that is there. Constant is there or it is there. Okay, so that is not a problem. Now the question is that whether the highest derivative is having a independent variable only, means a alpha of x. It is already constant, so therefore it is a semilinear PDE. Okay. Similarly, if you look at the xux plus yuy equal to 0, this is also semilinear because the coefficients of only x and y only. Now, how about ut plus ux? Ut plus ux equal to 0. It is not semilinear because the highest derivative is here ut as well as ux. Okay, so in this case, you got to check whether the coefficients are functions of x only. Either it should be a constant or it should be a function of x and y only. So here it is a function of u, therefore it is not semilinear. Okay, it is not semilinear. Okay, the highest coefficient you got to check it. Not all the coefficient, only the highest coefficient. In this case, see the same problem is there. Here also ut plus ux is there. Here also ut plus ux is there, but u triple x is here. So in this case, this is called semilinear PDE, but this case it is not called semilinear PDE because it depends on the derivative which you are talking about. Okay, the highest derivative only you got to check it. So you can compare these two problems. Almost same kind of setup, but this is semilinear, but this is not semilinear because of the derivatives which you are looking at. Next one, almost linear. Okay, so if it is almost linear means, suppose you can write this equation in this way: less than or equal to m. Okay, a alpha of x du of u less than or equal to m, and then you can just get it something like plus f of x comma u, some function of x comma u. You can write it. Okay, means all its derivatives, all the derivatives are linear. Okay, but only that u terms, the u term, it is not necessary that it is linear. Then that is called almost linear. Okay, here a alphas are functions of x only, xl. Okay, or you can write this way: L of u. In this way also you can write it: Lu is equal to f of x comma u. And that is also called this L is linear operator. Then that is also called almost linear. For example, you can see that ut plus ux equal to u square. So here I can write this equation: ut plus ux equal to minus u square. I can write it. So this term I can just put it as f of x comma u. Okay, because here x comma u can be there, not ux y should be there. So in this case, it is called only this operator. I got to check whether it is linear or not linear. This is linear, therefore it is called almost linear. Same way, xux plus yuy is also almost linear. I think last classification. Then we have something called homogeneous and inhomogeneous. Suppose I have written this equation. Okay, last classification. So suppose I have written this equation: du. So I written this as some operator. Du is equal to some fx I have written. Okay. So if this f is identically 0, then this is called homogeneous equation. If f is not equal to 0 for some x, then it is called non-inhomogeneous equation. Or some people call it as non-homogeneous also. Okay, so that is depending on the books, you can check it. So almost this equation ut plus ux equal to 0 is a homogeneous. The last equation is inhomogeneous. Okay, and the second equation is also inhomogeneous because the right hand side you have some x is there. Okay, so these are all some of the things. So these are all some examples. So you can create a table like this. So ut plus ux equal to u square equal to 0. So you can just put like whether first one I'm just writing whether it is a homogeneous, the order of the PDE. Okay, then next one you can write like whether it's a linear or non-linear or almost linear, you can write it, or semi-linear or quasi-linear or highly homogeneous or fully non-linear. All this classification you can do. Okay, so you can put more tick marks as you wish. Okay, this one I just leave it as an exercise because based on this one you are going to solve some exercise problem which I have already posted in the Google Classroom. Okay, so I think it is almost time, so we'll go to the it's time already, I think. Yeah, it's time already, so we'll stop the lecture. We will classify this in the next class for the first order and second order problems.
Sir, one question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, in the quasi-linear, I'm confused with the u can be function of x and y both, or because if it is only the function of x, then it will be linear.
No, u can be function of x comma y. See, what I'm talking about is the coefficients only. The d alpha u you are writing, right? For example, ux, uy you are writing, right? So this part only I'm talking about. The derivative coefficients only you have to talk about, not about the u. U can be anything. I'm not saying like u is linear or not linear. The u can be a function. Okay, it can be a non-linear function also. I'm not talking about whether u is linear or not. I'm talking about the PD is linear or not. I think you are confusing with the function linear and the PDE linear. I'm talking about whether the PD is linear. Okay, so this is my function actually. U is not my function. What I'm talking about is I'm talking about my f, capital F, not about u. Okay, this f is linear or not linear, that I got to talk about, not whether u is linear or not linear. It's clear? Gurinder, is it clear? Okay, thank you.